Hi everyone, it's Nichol Spohr. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do felt stitching. These are some new stitching dies from the Simon Says Stamp December 2025 release, and I had to use all 5 of the new dies because they're just too cute not to. I decided to create some Frosty fun ornaments with these stitching penguin, stitching snowman, stitching mitten, and stitching birdie with a few accents from the stitching holly and berries. So here's a look at the packaging for each, and then we're going to talk about kind of my thought process behind my creations and digging into your stash. So I pulled a few things like seed beads, some embroidery floss. I thought I was going to use those wood beads. I didn't. A whole bunch of wonderful decorative buttons like carrot noses and snowflakes and little mini button eyes. These are all from Just Another Button Company. And then of course in my craft stacks I have got all of my felt pieces die cut, so they're super easy to use. Now, what I'm going to do for each of these is kind of talk about the pieces and then talk about my plan. This is the scarf pieces. I actually nixed this idea, and we'll talk about that a little bit further in the video as we start creating our snowman. What I want you to think about when you are stitching any felt stitching die into a plush shape, an ornament, etc., is working one side at a time. Now I am going to go ahead and prep the inside of my ornament. I have found that like fiberfill, etc., tends to strain the stitching holes, and I really just like a little bit flatter ornament. I actually use quilt batting that I die cut. It's a super thin quilt batting. I use about 2 layers, although I probably could use 3 or 4. And I just trim off the stitching holes as I don't want to stitch through those when we get to that part of the assembly process. I'm going to then set the inside of each felt stitching or felt ornament to the side and set the backing over to the side, and we're going to work with one side of our snowman to begin with. I'm going to load up a needle with some black embroidery floss. I'm just using 1 strand here. I am using a combination of Aurifil and DMC. Both of them are just a cotton embroidery floss, nothing special. I just picked something close to what I wanted to use. And then I am going to stitch the eyes in place. Now, the magic of these eyes, of course, is that they're so teeny tiny. There are dies included in this set. You can glue them in place with a little felt glue or liquid glue or hot glue, whatever you feel comfortable with. But I really love the opportunity to dress up my felt die cut pieces or my felt ornaments and shapes with things I have on hand. So I really dug into, the buttons that I have, the different embroidery flosses, some seed beads, etc. And I think it really adds a special handmade touch. After I've stitched on these little eyes, these are 3mm buttons from Just Another Button Company. They are very tiny. They're my absolute favorite. I am going to just on the back, make a little knot to secure the eyes in place. Now, one thing I want to note with any small button like this, you're going to want to either use a beading needle or a very, very small needle, something with a very small eye that will go through the center of those buttons. Now, because I didn't know if I had any more of those needles, a lot of times I will just load up multiple needles, which I did for other parts of this, but I didn't know if I had any more small needles. I decided I didn't want to unthread this needle and then rethread it again. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch the eyes on the penguin layers as well. But we are going to set the penguin back aside and we will come back to him here in just a little bit. I just found that I felt like this was a time saver, basically, is getting this part done. I also changed the placement from the packaging. I put my eyes a little closer together on both the penguin and the snowman, but you can do anything you want to do here. I do recommend using a high quality felt with your felt stitching. I particularly love felt from Benzie Design, or Spellbinders sells some felt that you can get right here through Simon Says Stamp. And any of those are going to be great. I actually dug into a bunch of scraps for everything I was using today. I had some bigger scraps to die cut the bigger pieces, but I kind of kept to a simple color palette, and that way I have a complete new matching set of ornaments for my tree. Once I'm done with the eyes, I am going to go ahead and stitch the carrot nose to my snowman using some orange embroidery floss. Now, these little carrot buttons are so cute. I just had to use them. I have had them for a little while in my stash, and I thought, you know what, this would be a great opportunity to add a very fun, decorative, dimensional touch to my snowman. The next thing we're going to do are the cheeks for our snowman. This time I am going to load up my needle with some very light pink embroidery floss to match the light pink I'm using for the cheeks. And I am going to do kind of I almost would call it a wheel spoke type of stitch. So I'm kind of cutting the circle in half. I'm going around it. I'm couching it in between my stitches. So I did, you know, an X, I suppose, not really an X, more like a T. And then I'm going to do another one. It's almost like little pieces of a pie, but this is how I am attaching the felt cheeks to my snowman. I think I have mentioned this before, but if I can avoid glue on my felt ornaments, I do. I like stitching details, no matter what kind of, I've done stitching for like adding cheeks in lots of different ways. This was something new I tried today. I liked it, so we're going to copy it for the penguin, but it's really just a trial and error to see what I like. Now, I did lay the scarf in place because at this point I still thought I might use it, but I had pulled some other buttons from my stash. All of my buttons today are from Just Another Button Company. I had actually received this little fun, it inspired the color choices for my whole project today. I think it was called Frosty Fun or something button pack from them either last year or the year before as a gift with another purchase. It was just a little gift bag full of little teeny tiny snowflakes and then these light blue buttons. And the color combo of the dusty blue, the light blue, and the white inspired my color combo for my felt ornaments today. Plus, they do match my guest room, and I have a little tabletop tree in my guest room. So I am going to add these ornaments to that little tree because I think they'll just be super cute. But my whole point is you can find little buttons, little trinkets all over the place. Have fun with it. You know, make it your own. It's always really fun to kind of use up some of those things that we might have in our stash and have had for a while and breathe new life into them. So I sewed a couple buttons down the front of my snowman, and then I thought I'm going to give my snowman a little pocket. And how I did that, that die is over there to the left of the screen. This is actually a window die from my Acorn house felt stitching dies with Spellbinders. And I just flipped it upside down, and it's going to make the most perfect little pocket on my snowman. Then I loaded up my needle with 2 strands of embroidery floss in a sage green color, and I am going to stitch little pine branches that are coming out of the pocket. Then we'll stitch the pocket to the front of the snowman. Something I want to note, I have yet to sew the 2 halves together. Everything I have done so far and will continue to do through embellishing this pocket for my snowman is on the front panel. That means everything on the back is hidden. And so I really want to make sure I have all of this done first before I move on to stitching the front and back together. The pen I used to draw my pine branch on my felt, it is called an air erasable marker. I use it in quilting a lot, and I decided to try it for this just to kind of help give me a guideline. Whenever I freestyle it, it doesn't go so well. And so I thought, you know what, let's try this, and it worked fantastic. I was able to stitch these 2 little pine sprigs so that it's going to look like it's coming out of little Mr. Frosty's pocket here. You're going to notice a recurring theme through all 4 of my ornaments today, where they're going to feature little leafy branches and then a scattering of the little snowflakes and seed beads. It's a really cute, easy way to decorate. All of the seed beads I'm using today, I think I'm only using the 1 color, and I'll tell you what that is right now. It's these check glass beads from Hobby Lobby in, I'll tell you the size and the color if I can read it, but they're super tiny. I think they're size 11, and I don't know, they're white, pardon me. Yep, size 11 in white. So I've stitched on my little pine branches. Now I've laid my pocket in place, and we're going to stitch this down. After we could have stitched the things to the pocket, but I decided to stitch the pocket to the snowman. I felt like that would be a little easier. The snowman will be a little easier to hold on to add all of those small pieces than just holding on to the little pocket. So I'm just going to go around, and how I like to stitch anything with the felt stitching dies is I go up and down every other stitching hole all the way around the shape. When I get back to where I started, I reverse and fill in every other stitch all the way around. There's a lot of different ways you can choose to stitch this. Maybe you want to do a blanket stitch for stitching your pieces together, or other kinds of decorative stitches. This is just kind of my tried and true, and I like how it looks. And I think this little pocket is going to add such fun character to our snowman. Once we're around, we're, like I said, just going to reverse, go back the other direction, and fill in all of the area. Then I'll tie this in a knot on the back of my ornament. I decided to use 3 of the little snowflakes and 4 of the white seed beads on my pocket. So one of the, I say bigger snowflakes, but quite frankly, all of these are pretty tiny. Some are micro tiny and some are just tiny. I used a darker blue snowflake, 2 little white snowflakes, and then those little white seed beads. I really tried not to incorporate a lot of additional color. You'll notice I picked that kind of sagey green color so that it was a nice light green. It still obviously reads green, but it's not going to be so in your face like maybe a darker green color would be. And the pink of the cheeks and orange of noses is about the extent of color. Almost everything else on all of my ornaments today is going to be these soft colors, with the exception, of course, of the penguin, who has the black portions for the body, just because it is a penguin. So now I'm stitching on with about 2 strands of embroidery floss and that same teeny tiny beading needle, and we're stitching on all of our little pieces. Now again, seed beads and tiny buttons are going to require a small beading needle or a needle with a very small eye so that it will go through those tiny little embellishments. I kind of consider all of the embellishing of my felt ornaments here today very much like my cards, where I like to be a little bit extra. Okay, so once we have our seed beads in place, we are ready to stitch the front and back of our snowman together. Now I am going to open up my seed beads, and I'm just going to kind of put them in my craft stacks here so that they don't roll all over the place. The triangle trays from Simon Says Stamp would also be a really good option. I do recommend not working directly out of the tube of seed beads if you use these kinds. They're tall and skinny. I have knocked one over before and seed beads went everywhere. And they do spill kind of easily. So I generally put a few out into a tray or something like that and work from that. And if I need more, then I'll just dump out a few more a little bit later. But that way I don't have to worry about a whole container of seed beads going rogue. Okay, so we're going to take the batting pieces that we trimmed the stitching holes off of, the back of our snowman, and we are going to sandwich the batting between the two layers. Starting in between the two layers of felt, we are going to then stitch up and down all the way around the stitching holes. This is going to give you stitches that are every other stitch. Again, when we get back to where we started, we will reverse and go back and fill in all of those spaces. Couple things to keep in mind. I like to start in between the felt layers. That way, when I get back to where I started, I can make a tiny knot, snip it close to the seam, and that knot buries in between the two layers, and it gives a nice, clean, seamless look. The second thing, if you are going to make your shape an ornament, I do like sandwiching my hanger at this point. So I am up at the top of my ornament, and I am simply going to grab my little bit of jute, tie it into a knot, and tuck the knot down into the center of my ornament. I do recommend when you sandwich that in between the layers, as you're stitching, try to catch the loops in between your thread so that it's secure. I accidentally did not do that for the mitten ornament here in a little bit, and when I tugged gently on my hanger, the whole thing plus the knot slid right out from in between the layers. There is a way to fix that really easily. You can thread up a needle with some twine and run that between the layers through the stitches, which is what I did to fix it, but it's much easier if you just make sure you catch it with your stitches as you're going. So I'm going to continue to stitch all the way around. When I get back to where I started, I will reverse. When you get back to where you started, you will again go through the middle. You won't go all the way through both layers, so you'll come out in between the layers right where the other end is, and you'll tie it into a little knot and snip close to the seam. For this reason, I do recommend starting with a new long length of embroidery floss. I use 3 strands for my stitching for this. I like the way it looks. 3 strands is generally my norm. You'll notice that for the eyes, cheeks, anything else that I stitched on, I used 2 strands. So just kept it a little bit thinner, and that goes for the pine branch as well. So here I'm getting back to where I started, and I'm going to come in between. So let me get right there, and I'm just going to go right in between the 2 layers, come out right where the other end is, and then we're just going to tug very gently, not tight, just gently, and tie it into a knot. Okay, I have this long length of felt now, and I am wrapping it around my snowman just like a real scarf basically, and I'm going to fold it over till I kind of get the look that I want, and I think that looks cute. You don't want to pull super tight or anything like that. Now, obviously, like this, the felt is not going to stay. So I'm just going to grab a coordinating color of embroidery floss, and coming up from underneath the scarf, I'm going to do a little teeny tiny tacking stitch. This stitch is not decorative at all. It's not to be seen at all. It is just something to hold this scarf in place so that I don't have to worry about it coming undone and falling off. So we're just going to come back through, and I've only tacked it in one little spot, and that should hold it. And then I'll just tie it into a little knot and snip that away. Now, the scarf is cute, but it could be cuter, right? We are going to trim probably about an 3/4 to an inch off each of the ends of our scarf. And then we're going to take very sharp scissors. I love these Tim Holtz haberdashery scissors. And we are going to snip the ends of our scarf to make it have that wonderful frayed look. and you just don't want to snip too close to one of the previous lines. You can fray them out a little bit, and there is our snowman ornament all finished. He is absolutely adorable. Okay, we're going to work on our penguin next since we started on the penguin a little bit ago. Now, something about the penguin I noticed, there are not stitching holes in the layering piece for the body of the penguin. I kind of wish there were, but you can make the best of this, and this is a great opportunity to do a decorative stitch. You can also glue this in place if you choose to. I'm going to go all the way around my penguin and do like a little, basically a little, whoops, I totally went through that same hole there. We're going to do a little tacking stitch all the way around. Now, I think I initially thought that I might do a whip stitch, and then I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to like it. So not here. I do love a whip, or I do love, pardon me, a blanket stitch. I do love a blanket stitch. I just decided I didn't want to do it for this. So we're just going to go around and tack it in place all the way. And this is one of my favorite little looks with felt stitching. I think it is a little interesting, but it doesn't stand out so much that is the only place that your eye is drawn into. So I'm going to go all the way around and tack this white piece down to the black body of our penguin. Just like the snowman, there are eyes, nose, and cheeks for the penguin. I am only using the cheeks and the beak for the penguin. I use those buttons just like before, the 3mm micro buttons. We are going to use the same light pink cheeks and the same cheek detail, and we are going to use the felt for the nose, but we are going to completely stitch over it to create this really awesome dimension for the penguin nose using our embroidery floss. So basically, our nose is more of a guide for our embroidery floss, and it also will help the embroidery floss puff up a little bit. I'm going to load up my needle with 2 strands of my orange embroidery floss, and we are going to stitch the nose in place first. Obviously, the carrot nose is not going to work on all of our critters. It really just works for that snowman. So I wanted to find an alternative way to really make the face shine. Just like when I'm creating card projects with critters or people that have faces make such a big difference. So if you can really make the face shine, I feel like the ornament really, that is where it all starts. That's where the magic starts. So as you can see, I am just going back and forth with my floss, trying to do as straight of lines as possible, and it's nice and puffy. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's so cute. I love, love, love how this turned out. So let's finish stitching this, and then we will do the cheeks just like before. Instead of the pocket for this penguin, we are instead going to draw a longer pine branch, sort of following the curved edge of the tummy on our penguin, and we're going to fill that in with all of those little micro snowflakes and seed beads just like before to dress it up. Our penguin does not come with a scarf, but I thought the scarf turned out so cute on the snowman. We're going to have to do it again for our penguin because of course our penguin needs a scarf too, right? I think it's so cute. So let's go ahead and add those cheeks, and then we can add all of the fun decorative stitching. I'm just going to knot the end of my embroidery floss. The cheeks for the penguin are quite a bit bigger, but I think they're going to be really cute. And again, just like I did with the snowman, I moved the eyes a little bit closer together. You'll notice I reference the other face components when I am placing the eyes and when I start placing everything, just to make sure that it all flows and looks appropriate. We're going to use those same or the same, pardon me, air erasable pen to draw in our pine branch. This time though, I am going to make it quite a bit longer as we have a little bit more surface area to work with, and I'm not adding anything extra like buttons down the front or a pocket. I'm going to snip off that stitching edge off of my quilt batting so it makes it easier to sandwich, and then I'm just going to draw in my pine branch. You might also notice there's a little heart on the back of my penguin. I forgot this on my snowman, but one of the things I really love to do is add a little heart tacked to the back of my critters. I think it just adds a kind of cute, unexpected touch. So we will be adding that to the penguin, and I used a heart from my Stitched Snowman star dies from Spellbinders. But any little heart die will work here. Just like I did for the pocket, we are using 2 strands of this kind of sage green embroidery floss, and we are stitching our pine branch all the way up the side. The great thing about the air erasable marker, even though it shows purple here, it's all going to be gone soon and you'll never see it. It serves as a great guide for following. What I really love about all these teeny tiny buttons is that the size and scale works really well for these cute little critters. I don't know about you, but I love making new felt ornaments for my kids each year. And you could start this tradition with your own kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, whomever, or maybe just for yourself. And it would be super fun to have a new seasonal ornament each year that you have handmade. Now I am just going to do a few tacking stitches to stitch the heart on the back of the penguin. I don't show that in the video because I just did the same stitches that I did around the body of the penguin, and you want to stitch those on the back of the penguin before you stitch the whole thing together. Now this one will have the penguin arms that we are going to need to sandwich between the layers and catch with our stitches as we work our way around. I'm going to place the batting right in between the 2 layers of the penguin. So back to back with the batting in between, we're going to sandwich the penguin's arms in place. And just like before, we're going to start stitching. Now the black is a little bit harder to see stitching on camera, so I am going to just cut this out because the stitching is exactly the same as the snowman, with the exception that I am catching the arms as I go around. Again, make sure you're coming up in between the 2 layers. If you have a magnifying light like I do, or just a really good task light, I would recommend, especially with this black, working underneath the task lamp. I did find that a lot easier. I started doing it in here at my desk, and even though I have great lighting, I went ahead and used my task light. And here is a look at both of my finished snowman and penguin. Let's work on the mitten next. Stitch mittens have always been one of my favorite. Memory Box has a stitch mitten that I still have in my stash, by the way, that I have always loved. This one has a wonderful scalloped layer that you can go in between. For this one, we are going to draw an even bigger piney branch going out one direction and another, both kind of coming out or centering around this large snowflake shape from Just Another Button Company. This is by far the biggest snowflake shape I am using, and I felt like the mitten was a big enough image that it really works well for it. We're going to start by stitching our pine branch first, and then we're going to stitch on all of our buttons and seed beads to decorate our mitten really, really cute. I absolutely love this mitten and how it turned out, and I like all of the little cluster and shape here. Once you have all of your embellishments in place, it's going to be time to stitch all of the layers together. Now I did choose to use all of the different layers that came with this mitten set. So we have a front of the mitten, which we're working on here, the back of the mitten, the scallop layering piece that goes between the two. I also will have 2 layers of batting inside of this one. And then at the cuff, we have 2 layers per side. I did opt to do it on both sides for the mitten. I don't always choose to do that, and I'm not going to do it for our last ornament, the bird. I didn't do the back side of him, but for the mitten, I did. That will make stitching around all of those different layers up at the cuff a little bit more difficult, but it is not it is doable is what I want to say. It is not too bad. You just kind of have to go slow. That's my best recommendation. So I've got my back piece, my scallop piece, my 2 layers of batting, and we're going to start with that. And I'm actually going to start right below where we're going to add the layering cuff pieces. And we're going to stitch all the way around first, just kind of catching our scallop layer and all of that good stuff. And then as we get up close to the top on the other side, that's when we're going to layer both the 2 pieces on the front and 2 pieces on the back and go through all 5 layers. So mitten front, mitten back, 2 layering pieces on the front, 2 layering pieces on the back, and of course that scallop layer. I did cut out some of the stitching simply because it's a repeat, but I did want to show you as I get up here to the top, really making sure it's lined up. So here's a good look at it. And I hold it in my hand as such. You can see how I'm flipping my wrist back and forth, making sure that I am going through all of those stitching holes every time and lining them up. That's what's going to give you that perfect finished look. And my poor jute string, I gave it a little tug here in a minute. I hope I do it on camera. I can't remember if I did or not. And it pulled right out because I didn't catch it with my stitches. So that was, I had to get creative with that. I got a little knot in my thread, so I was fixing that. And we're simply going to reverse now and go back the other way. And I will do this off camera, but you can see how it's nice and puffy up there. But look how adorable this mitten is. Imagine doing a little set of these and then have them connected on a thicker string or ribbon, so it looks like a little set of mittens. How cute would that be? And then you can just put the ribbon over the branch of your tree. Oh, it would be adorable. Okay, these are some leaves from the Holly and Berries set, and I have cut 2 leaves per each, and we're stitching them together, going up and down every other stitching hole and then going back. I'm just going to tie a little knot down at the bottom because we are going to hot glue these to the mitten to finish off. You could use a single leaf, but I like the added dimension of 2. I'm using the smallest leaf from the set for both. There are 3 different sizes and I used the smallest one. I'm not going to use any of the circles from the set today, and instead, I'm going to use a white button in replace of the berry just to keep with the theme. I also, of course, did my leaves in that gray color so that they matched as well. Here I am with a doll needle and some of my jute, stringing that through the layers so that I can have a little hanger up here in the top corner of my ornament. As I said, I had to improvise and make that work, but it looks just fine. Okay, as soon as my hot glue is ready, we'll glue those in place. While my hot glue gun was heating up, I decided to go ahead and start working on the stitched bird. On the wing of the bird, this also doesn't have stitching holes, and so I use this as the place where I am going to draw in my vine, stitch my vine in place and then fill in with all of the cute little snowflakes and seed beads to dress up the wing of my bird. I did opt to use a bigger eye on this bird. You'll notice that this is a 4mm eye instead of the 3mm. I felt like that fit a little bit better size and scale wise. One thing that I don't love about this bird is that there are not stitching holes where the beak goes. So where we sandwich the penguin arms in the penguin layer, you don't necessarily do that for the bird. So I'm going to show you how I do that here in a minute. I'm just tacking the bird wing to the body of the bird, holding the gray layer and the base front layer in place. I like the little stitching detail. I don't necessarily like to just glue it in place if I can avoid it. And I love all of the little touches of blues and grays with the white. We're just going to kind of follow the shape of the wing. You could even go all the way around the wing if you wanted to. I didn't, but I think that would be a cute look as well. My hot glue gun is heated up, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the back of my leaves, and we are just going to position them and press those in place right here up at the top of the mitten. I also went ahead and threaded my button with some string embroidery floss so that it looks like I stitched it on, and I glued that in place too. Okay, let's finish off our bird. This time we are going to put a little bit of glue inside of the bird where the beak goes. I have sandwiched my batting layers between the back piece and the front piece. And we are going to start stitching just like before, starting in between the two layers, stitching all the way around, and coming back out in between the layers, securing in a knot. I'm also going to make sure that I sandwich my hanger right up here at the top. Now, because there's that opening right where the beak is, I actually stitched right where I started towards the beak. Then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come back and extend and go past where I started and do that up and down, up and down, up and down, all the way around to the other side of the bird where the beak is, and then reverse and come back. I'll still end right where I started, but I felt like that worked really well. Once I have this all stitched, I will show you close-ups of all 4 ornaments. This set of ornaments would make an absolutely fabulous gift if you wanted to give them all to someone special or break them up and give them as individual gifts. So here is my cute little bird. I wish I'd added some little eyelashes, so I might redo the bird and add some eyelashes. Here is my mitten. And then, of course, we have our little snowman and penguin. So much fun, so cute, and I can't wait to see what you guys make. Thank you so much for joining me today for this set of 4 felt ornaments featuring Simon Says Stamp Dicember dies. Thank you so much for joining me today. I truly love sharing creativity with this amazing community of crafters. A special thank you goes out to my wonderful Patreon members. I appreciate you all so much. If you'd like to join us on Patreon, you'll find the link in the video description below. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do and enjoy exclusive content, behind-the-scenes updates, and extra perks. There's something for everyone, and we'd love to have you join our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.